So it's about a man who's completely in love with his wife, who's dead, and he just can't get past it. This is not a book in which we're saying he's going to have a moment where he's going to realize you have to pick up and move on. No, this is a guy, he's destroyed by this.
Teddy's not moving on,
He
right?
is destroyed by this. He
Yeah.
loved his wife. And so that was the thing. I mean, on the plot level, it's just a blast. It's like, oh, which Chinese puzzle can I open up next? But then at the heart of the book is a very kind of sad love story about a guy who just can't move on.
And I noticed, in fact, I was visiting your website for those who might like to do it. It's DennisLehaneBooks.com. There was a wonderful essay that you, or interview, or actually might have even been on, trying to remember, some long, well, anyway, talking about how music, you know, that you like to write, listening to music, and it helps set the mood. And I mean, we've had, Michael and I had this discussion, Michael Connolly and I, earlier this year, and you know, they did a CD of the music.
I know, I think that's great.
Well, I'm going to tell you what, that was a brilliant marketing idea.
It was.
Really good.
We tried to do, we thought about, my agent and I thought about that. My agent called me about that about 4 years ago and said, we should do a CD of the music that Patrick and Angie listen to. And I said, do you know what that would cost? We're not talking about standards. We're talking about, you know, they listen to Nirvana, they listen to, you know, the Rolling Stones, music you can't touch, so.
Well, no, music and poetry, the two things, as any publisher knows, you actually can't afford to quote and do things in books because you get killed. So. It was January Magazine.
Okay.
Also wrote a very nice interview, which is up on their website, and also talked about the, you know, part of your creative process, enjoyment, however you want to look at it, is listening to whatever the music is that gets you going, gets the juices moving, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I love when you said earlier, I mean, if I were going to pick one single word that I would say defines you, contrary would absolutely be it.
Yeah, contrary.
So I did think that
in a very friendly way.
Well, yeah, no, and meant with love, but you know, I would certainly say that contrary is to a great degree what you're all about. And I thought to myself, another thought about Shutter Island was that you must have really enjoyed the sheer contrariness of doing a book like that after the books that you had already done.
There was a kind of
I could just see
there
you
was a
going,
kind of cackling moment where I just went, God, they're gonna hate me for this, and you know.
Exactly.
And so that's why it's been a lot of, it's just one of those things where sometimes you just feel, no matter what, you feel like that I never know if a book is good or not, or I can't even speak to that because I'm the writer, and who the hell should trust a writer, particularly. It's like, you know, everybody has the most beautiful baby in the world. You know, I'm really tired of that. All my friends are having kids. I think my yardstick for a book is, did I accomplish what I set out to accomplish? Did I meet my own personal yardstick? And if I did, or if I was close, if what was in my head and what's on the page are actually very close, then I feel very good. And I feel very good by that yardstick on Shutter Island.
Well, you should. You know, one of the other things I also recalled was that when you and I had a talk, I remember the bookstore talk about Mr. Kramer. And one of the things that most impressed me was when you said, you know, here you had this big success and you and your publisher sat down to negotiate terms for future work, that you gave yourself the gift of time.
Yep, that's all I ever wanted.
And I thought, well, how handy that you had all that for Shutter Island, because, you know, it's not a book that would have just like leapt into life and...
Yeah, you know, it took its own.
You needed to digest.
Well,
I remember you mentioned that.
I also aborted a book in between. I'd written about.
Well, and I was going to ask you, did you actually start off on? I can't even remember what the working title of it was.
It was called Missing Dolores.
Right.
And I ended up taking the names from it and using them in.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but otherwise it was a completely different book, and I just.
Just didn't work?
It wasn't working right now, is what it was. It just, for whatever reason, it wasn't coming together, and it was a Buckingham book, and it was very different in mood. It was very quiet. It was a very bittersweet little book. It was a little book. It was a small book about small lives and very small wants and needs, and it just wasn't coming together.
But how handy that you had given yourself that 2-year period.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because I thought about that when I read about Missing Dolores, and then when I read this book, and I thought, what would Dennis have done if he really had to turn in that book under contract?
I wouldn't know. They know it. They know it. They know it. You know, it's the only thing. I have a very wonderful relationship with my publisher, and I always have, and I think it comes from growing up really working class. And just, I look at them as they're my employers, and they ask me to do something, and I do it, you know, for the most part. The only place where that doesn't come into play, and then I can be a very kind of, you know, it's what my editor will say, it's the only part of the time you know I'm a writer, is when it comes to forcing. You can't force a manuscript out of me. It just will not happen. I won't allow it. I would rather suffer a calamitous setback and have everybody lose their heads and have everything go to hell than put out a bad book.
Went all the way back to A Drink Before the War. Don't I remember that you resisted some editorial changes and you decided that that was such an interesting book too. I still remember when I saw A Drink Before the War. It came from a very literary publisher. You've done all your other books with William Morrow, but Drink Before the War was Harcourt Brace Jovanovich, which is a not famed for its crime list, although they certainly do from time to time some really terrific.
But neither was Morrow when I started with them.
You know? Really, because I always kind of thought of them as at least having a you know, a mystery list.
They had a few, but they it was sort of like I came. A lot of us came at once, but it was, you know, me and then Peter Robinson and, you know, Laura Lippman and G.M. Ford and a lot of people, but some of those came up through paperback ranks through Avon. So it was a strange time, but
yeah. But A Drink Before the War, it has a dark cover, which one it is up here, and it has a kind of unlikely title for a crime novel. And I think I've told you, I kept looking at it and thinking, well, it's got, you know, it's a book about World War I.
I know.
And you know, because I thought, well, I looked at the publisher, not crime. I looked at the cover, looks like that. Looked at the title, and it was just by a miracle at the very end of the year it published, I read it. I think I had just, you know, I'd like gotten all the crime novels out of the way, and I thought, I love history, and I thought, well, this will be a treat for me. I'll read something different. It won't be a crime. And then there I was, and I thought, good Lord.
There's certain things I do that I think I know that would, I would probably sell a lot more, or I would probably be whatever if I didn't do certain things, which one of which is something along those lines of my titles. If it's aesthetically
what does A Drink Before the War actually refer to?
There's a line in the book. There's a line in the book where he says, Devin the cop says, come on, I'll buy you a drink before the war. They're talking about the impending gang war.
Right, okay.
But it's actually a song title. It was a Sinead O'Connor song that I was listening to at the time, and I remember saying to my roommate, I think I'm going to call my book this. And she said, I bet you can't work it into a line of dialogue. And so I did.
Contrary Dennis, once again.
Yep, absolutely.
What about Darkness Take My Hand, the title of your second book?
That came, I don't know. It was always the title. I had friends working on this, and myself included. For some reason, we think it's some sort of song. It's half of a lyric from a song somewhere, but I can't find it.
Did Michael tell you that Lost Light does not have Michael Connelly, that Lost Light is called Last Light because his title was so close to Darkness Take My Hand that they wouldn't let him use it?
No.
Did you know that?
No.
It was wonderful. Something he and I talked about. And
for the new book? His new book?
It had a title that was Darkness something. Anyway.
But his last, 2 books ago, was A Darkness More Than Night.
I'm just telling you.
Which is a great title.
It is a great title.
But I think it's more, he needs to get off the whole darkness tip.
Maybe so. Yeah. But I mean, it specifically came up then, you know, Darkness More Than Night and Darkness Take My Hand, you know, was.
I love it, Darkness.
And so he had to move, you know, Lost Light turns out to be the title they finally ended up with. But I thought.
Wow. I only lost one. Sacred was not originally called Sacred. They were
and of course now your titles, because that's what they like, are shorter and, you know, snappier and.
Well, Mystic River was always going to be called Mystic River. I had that title before I had the book. Shutter Island. Shutter Island just popped out. And
it is a mythical island.
Yeah, it doesn't exist.
Okay, because I mean, people have asked, you know,
yeah, I know,
where is it?
I know. And it's based a little bit on an island called Long Island that had a mental institution on it, but not like this. But no, that just worked out. Mystic River, Shutter Island. Then, if the next book has a 14-word title, then it has a 14-word title. It's just whatever. I'm very protective of my titles.
I love that. Well, that actually, it's a sign of power. You know, I've always said to Jim Burke, only he could have actually called a book In the Electric Mist with the Confederate Dead. Yeah. You know, I mean, you have to have a certain amount of.
But Jim wasn't really powerful by that point, and I think I just set a precedent with A Drink Before the War. Once I slid that one under, they said, "Oh well, we'll give him his titles."